Welcome to Eternal Love Diaries, where real stories change real lives. Every love carries a story. And here, each one is told from the heart. Today's story follows James, a 38-year-old single father working tirelessly as an accountant at a mid-sized firm in Portland. After losing his wife to cancer 3 years ago, he's devoted himself entirely to raising his 10-year-old daughter Lily. When his new boss, Katherine, arrives to revitalize the struggling company, their professional relationship takes an unexpected turn after a company celebration. A moment of vulnerability leads to a morning of regret and confusion, leaving both questioning what really happened and what they truly want. As James navigates his growing feelings while maintaining professional boundaries, he must confront his fears of opening his heart again. What unfolds will test his courage, challenge his perceptions of moving forward, and reveal whether two wounded souls can find healing in each other's company. "Dad, you're going to be late again." Lily's voice echoed through their modest two-bedroom apartment as James frantically searched for his missing tie. The morning chaos had become their routine since he'd taken on extra responsibilities at work. 3 years as a single parent had taught him efficiency, but some days the weight of doing it all alone crushed him beneath its invisible pressure. "Found it." James triumphantly held up the navy blue tie that had somehow migrated to Lily's backpack. "And I made your lunch already, turkey sandwich, apple slices, and those weird cheese crackers you like." He smiled at his daughter, her brown eyes, so like her mother's, rolling dramatically as she grabbed her lunch bag. These small moments of normalcy were precious to him, anchors in a life that had been upended when cancer took his wife Sarah far too young. The drive to Lily's school was filled with her chatter about the upcoming science fair, a welcome distraction from the anxiety building in James's chest. Today marked the arrival of Katherine Wells, the new CEO brought in to save Meridian Financial from its downward spiral. Rumors of layoffs had circulated for weeks, and as a mid-level accountant with a mortgage and a daughter to support, James couldn't afford to lose his position. "Remember, Grandma's picking you up today because I have that company thing," James reminded Lily as he pulled up to the school drop-off lane. He watched her bounce away, pigtails swinging, seemingly untouched by the worries that kept him awake at night. The resilience of children amazed him. While he still felt broken, Lily had somehow found a way to embrace life again. The office hummed with nervous energy when James arrived, colleagues huddled in whispered conversations that abruptly halted when Katherine Wells strode through the main doors. She wasn't what James had expected, younger than the previous CEO, perhaps early 40s, with a confident stride and sharp eyes that seemed to assess everything in seconds. Her dark hair was pulled back in a professional bun, her charcoal suit impeccably tailored, but it was her voice that commanded attention when she addressed the assembled staff. "I'm not here to dismantle what works," Katherine announced, her gaze sweeping across the room. "I'm here to identify what doesn't and fix it. Some changes will be necessary, but my goal is growth, not reduction." The tension in James's shoulders eased slightly as she continued outlining her vision for the company's future, a future that, for the first time in months, sounded promising rather than precarious. The following weeks brought a whirlwind of changes as Katherine implemented new systems and restructured departments. James found himself working directly with her on financial projections, surprised by her hands-on approach and genuine interest in his input. "These quarterly forecasts are impressive, James," she commented during their third late-night planning session, the office empty around them. "You have a talent for seeing patterns others miss." "Just doing my job," James replied, uncomfortable with praise after years of feeling invisible in the company hierarchy. He glanced at his watch, thinking of Lily at home with his mother again. The guilt of another missed bedtime story weighed heavily, though he knew securing his position was worth the temporary sacrifice. Katherine noticed his distraction, her expression softening. "You have someone waiting at home?" The question felt personal, crossing the professional boundary they'd maintained, but her tone held genuine curiosity rather than intrusion. "My daughter," James answered, surprising himself by adding, "She's 10. It's just the two of us since my wife passed away." He rarely shared this information with colleagues, let alone superiors, but something about Katherine's direct gaze made honesty feel natural. "I'm sorry," she said simply, without the awkward platitudes he'd grown accustomed to hearing. "Children that age need consistency. We can reschedule tomorrow's meeting for regular hours." The consideration caught him off guard, as did the brief glimpse of something vulnerable in her eyes before she returned to the spreadsheets before them. The company celebration came 6 weeks after Katherine's arrival, marking the successful completion of their first major project under her leadership. The upscale restaurant's private room buzzed with a lightness James hadn't felt at work in years. Even Katherine seemed transformed, her professional reserve softening as she mingled with employees, glass of wine in hand. "You should be proud," she said, appearing beside James as he observed the festivities from a quiet corner. "This turnaround wouldn't have happened without your financial insights." The compliment warmed him unexpectedly, as did her smile, more genuine than he'd seen before, reaching her eyes in a way that transformed her face. "Team effort," James deflected, though pride flickered through him. "You're the one who knew what needed changing." He noticed her sway slightly, realized she must have had several glasses of wine throughout the evening. The human moment humanized her, this powerful woman who had intimidated him just weeks ago. The celebration wound down near midnight, colleagues departing in groups until only a handful remained. James, having nursed a single beer all night, found himself helping Katherine gather her belongings as she fumbled with her clutch. "I should call you a ride," he suggested, concerned by her unsteady movements. "You shouldn't drive." "My apartment's just 2 blocks away," she insisted, then stumbled slightly when standing. "Though perhaps walking isn't wise either." A laugh escaped her, unguarded and warm, so different from her measured professional demeanor. Something shifted in the air between them, a recognition of seeing each other as people rather than positions. "I can drive you," James offered, the words emerging before he could consider their implications. "My mother's staying with Lily tonight anyway." The relief in Katherine's eyes settled the matter, and minutes later they were in his sensible sedan, navigating the quiet Portland streets as she directed him to her building. At her door, Katherine fumbled with her keys, frustration crossing her features. "I'm not usually this." She gestured vaguely, embarrassment replacing her earlier confidence. James gently took the keys, unlocked her door, and returned them with a reassuring smile. "We all deserve to celebrate sometimes," he said kindly, turning to leave when her hand caught his arm. The touch was light but electric, freezing him in place as something unspoken passed between them. "Would you come in for coffee?" Katherine asked, vulnerability threading through her voice. "I don't want to be alone right now." The request hung in the air, weighted with possibilities neither had acknowledged until this moment. James hesitated, aware of crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "Coffee sounds good," he finally answered, following her into an apartment that reflected her personality, elegant but minimal, with unexpected touches of warmth in colorful art and well-worn books. The coffee never materialized. Instead, they talked, really talked, for hours on her living room couch. Katherine spoke of her divorce 2 years prior, the career that became her refuge, the loneliness of success without someone to share it with. James shared stories of Sarah, of raising Lily alone, of the guilt that shadowed his rare moments of happiness. "It feels like betrayal," he admitted, voicing thoughts he'd never shared. "To laugh too much, to enjoy life when she can't." The confession hung between them, raw and honest in the dim light of her apartment. "Living fully isn't betrayal," Katherine responded softly. "It's the greatest honor you can give someone who loved you." Her words penetrated the armor he'd built around his heart, and when she leaned against his shoulder, exhaustion finally claiming her, James didn't move away. Morning arrived with harsh clarity, sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows as James woke disoriented on Katherine's couch. She emerged from her bedroom in casual clothes he'd never seen her wear, jeans and a simple blouse, her face bare of makeup and hair loose around her shoulders. The professional mask had completely fallen away, leaving a woman who suddenly seemed younger, more accessible. "I made coffee," she offered, not quite meeting his eyes. The real kind this time. The awkwardness between them was palpable, neither certain how to navigate this new territory. James accepted the mug she extended, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. "About last night," Katherine began, her voice uncharacteristically uncertain. "Nothing happened, right? Because I wish it did." The confession tumbled out, her voice trembling slightly with vulnerability he'd never expected from his confident boss. The admission hung between them, changing everything. James set down his coffee, heart hammering against his ribs. "Nothing happened," he confirmed gently. "You fell asleep talking. I didn't want to leave you alone." The relief in her eyes was quickly followed by something else, disappointment, perhaps, or regret for her candor. "I should go," James said, standing abruptly. "Lily will be waiting." The mention of his daughter seemed to reset the boundaries between them, reminding both of the complications beyond this moment. Katherine nodded, professional composure returning like armor being fastened piece by piece. "Of course," she replied, voice steadier now. "I'll see you Monday, James." The dismissal was clear, the vulnerable woman of moments ago retreating behind the CEO facade. He left with unspoken words crowding his throat, the drive home a blur of confusion and unexpected longing. The following weeks brought a careful distance between them at work, interactions limited to necessary professional exchanges. James told himself this was appropriate, safer for both their careers and his fragile heart. Yet he found himself noticing details he'd previously overlooked, the way Katherine's voice softened when speaking of client families, how she remembered every employee's children's names, the late hours she worked alone in her office. "Dad, you're doing that thing again," Lily observed one evening as they prepared dinner together, her small hands expertly tearing lettuce for salad. When James looked at her questioningly, she elaborated, "That thing where you're here but not really here. Like your body's making tacos but your brain is somewhere else." The perceptiveness of children never ceased to amaze him. "Just work stuff, kiddo," he deflected, though Katherine's face had indeed been occupying his thoughts. Lily studied him with eyes too knowing for her years, a miniature version of her mother's intuitive gaze. "Is it about that lady from your office? The one you mentioned?" Lily pressed, surprising him with her insight. "Grandma says you talk about her different than other people from work." The observation made James pause, wooden spoon suspended over the simmering pan as he considered how transparent his feelings must be. "Katherine is my boss," he explained carefully. "She's important to the company." The explanation sounded hollow even to his own ears, inadequate to describe the complex emotions that had developed since that night in her apartment. "Mom would want you to be happy," Lily said suddenly, the simple statement landing with the force of revelation. "She told me that before she got really sick. She made me promise to make sure you laughed every day." Tears pricked at James's eyes as his daughter continued sorting vegetables, unaware of how profoundly her words had shaken him. The company's quarterly review meeting the following day found James and Katherine alone in the conference room after others had departed, silence stretching between them as they gathered their materials. "Your projection model saved us from a significant misstep," Katherine acknowledged, professional but warmer than she'd been in weeks. The board was impressed. "Thank you," James replied, then hesitated before adding, "My daughter has been asking about you." The personal comment surprised them both, breaking the careful distance they'd maintained. Katherine's hands stilled on her tablet, eyes lifting to meet his with unguarded curiosity. "What did you tell her?" she asked, the question layered with meaning beyond its simple words. The air between them seemed to vibrate with possibility, with words unsaid since that morning in her apartment. "That you're someone I admire," James answered honestly. "Someone who reminds me that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting what's behind you." The admission cost him something, pride, perhaps, or the safety of emotional distance, but Katherine's expression made the risk worthwhile. "I've missed our conversations," she confessed quietly. "Not just about work." The acknowledgement of what had grown between them hung in the air, neither rushing to define or dismiss it. Instead, Katherine gathered her courage and added, "Perhaps we could continue one over dinner? Outside the office, away from professional complications." "I'd like that," James replied, feeling something long dormant stirring to life within his chest, not replacing what he'd lost, but growing alongside those memories like new blooms in a garden he'd thought would remain forever barren. "I think Lily would too, someday. When we're ready." Katherine's smile held promise rather than certainty, the beginning of something neither could yet name. "One step at a time," she suggested, wisdom in her patience. "We have time to discover what this could be." The words offered freedom from expectation, space to explore possibilities without pressure. As they walked together toward the elevator, their hands brushed briefly, a touch that might have been accidental but felt intentional in its gentleness. No dramatic declarations or passionate embraces marked this turning point, just the quiet acknowledgement that healing happens in small moments of courage, in choosing to open doors long kept closed. 3 months later, James watched from across his living room as Katherine helped Lily with her science project, their heads bent together in concentration over the model solar system. The sight filled him with a peace he hadn't expected to find again, not happiness untouched by loss, but joy made deeper by having known grief's depths. Second chances rarely arrive in the packages we expect. Sometimes they come disguised as professional challenges, as awkward mornings after vulnerable nights, as the wisdom of children who see clearly what adults complicate. For James and Katherine, it began with honesty in unexpected places and continued with the courage to acknowledge that hearts, once broken, don't mend to their original form, they rebuild into something different, something that carries the marks of what was lost while creating space for what might yet be found. We'd love to know, which country are you watching from? Drop a comment below. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe in second chances, show your support by hitting the like button. Subscribe to Eternal Love Diaries for more stories that touch the heart and change perspectives. From Portland, Oregon, United States.